Hi, welcome. I wanted to do a video update of some of the books that I've been reading recently. Some of them I did audiobooks. I just wanted to kind of show what the cover looked like, and I'm not good at editing yet. So here's the first one, Family Driven Faith, Doing What It Takes to Raise Sons and Daughters Who Walk with God by Bodhi Baucham Jr. So there's a little bit more of that. So this was a really cool book, and I feel like this is one that I'm gonna have to read again and take notes or get a physical copy and annotate, because it had so many great ideas, but some of the core things that I took away were things like family worship and how important that is to be discipling and disciplining, really discipling one of the best ways to do it. One of the greatest ways that God designed for us is within our own families. So when we are followers of Jesus, we should be discipling our children all the way through. And, discipline, that comes from the word disciple, so that is part of it, but that's not all of it. And once again, it reminds me of this word inheritance. And I want to give my children a heritage, an inheritance that's not just money or like when we die, how much stuff we have and that they divide up, but things that are deeper, things that are your heart and your soul, and that are so important, more important than anything else in this life. So anyways, he talks about building family culture and being intentional, and he talked about this idea of family worship, which it was cool to put it into those words, because we do different things. We sing together, we read the Bible, and we pray, but putting it into that framework of like, we're gonna have a commitment to do this. He said try and do it at least once a week, if not every day. You have to figure out what your schedule is. I think the important thing is to make it regular, make it habitual, and not make it something that you do sometimes, some extra thing. So we're trying to do it regularly. We're trying to do it every day, but that doesn't mean every single day. If there's something that happens, or we have other plans, or whatever, that's fine. But making it a habit, so that when things are not disturbed, or there's not some other special plan, that we do it regularly. And it doesn't have to be very long, maybe 15, 20 minutes. We like to do it in the evenings. We'll just have a time where we read the Bible, pray together as a family, and sing a hymn. Usually we sing one hymn for several weeks, because my children don't read yet. So it's better if we pick one and stick with it and learn the way the music goes, and learn some of the words, and just having those special things in the home that are meaningful. And really, he gave a fascinating picture of when he was growing up, and his mother was Buddhist, and she had all of these certain things that she did. There was like certain food, and she had like a statue of Buddha, and she would burn incense, and so there was a smell and all these things that were associated with it, which he was never Buddhist, so it really didn't have much to do with him, but all of that is in his memory. And it makes an impression on you as a child even. So sharing those things that are the deepest and most important to us, being intentional in our conversations. And he also talked about integrated family worship, where a lot of times our churches follow kind of the educational model, or they have over the last 150 years, where each kind of group of people goes off into their own age segregation, I guess. So you have like all third graders together and all elderly people together. And so it was inspiring and kind of beautiful, talking and thinking about how to go about the older women encouraging and teaching the younger women, and same with the men. And how does that happen if we're all, segregated into like young marrieds, or, middle-aged adults, or the singles are off in their own area, and each grade is segregated into only peers. And it's funny, because there's often, with homeschooling, there's often a question of like, well, how are they going to be socialized? But really, truly, where else other than when you're in graded school do you go to a place where you only have peers of your exact age? That's really a contrived situation. So learning how to interact with people of all different ages at the same time is that's a great socialization or whatever skill. Like that's a great way to socialize, to talk to. I mean, even for a child, a school-age child, to be able to condescend and talk to a 3-year-old or a baby, and but also be able to have a nice conversation with grandparents or elderly people. So it just had a lot of ideas, and I took some of them away, and I think I'm gonna have to read the book again to glean more from it and take notes from, but it was a really good read, so I enjoyed that. Here's another book that I read on audiobook. This is, here's what that looks like, A Change of Affection by Koukl, A Gay Man's Incredible Story of Redemption. So this was such a cool story. About the first half of it is his personal life and testimony of what it was like, just all of what his life was like growing up he was like the 8th child in a Catholic home, the youngest of 8. What that was like, what his experiences were, college and after college, and his pursuit of career, but then his journey to when he began to identify as gay, and what his whole story was, and then his coming to Jesus, and the just beautiful redemptive story. Is really astounding. And the second half of the book is kind of, it had lots of, like one chapter was like frequently asked questions, and just lots of ways to talk about how the body of Christ, how we can love people, but also be truthful about what God's plan is for our lives, and just the beauty of what God has for us. In 1 Corinthians 13, which is the love chapter of the Bible, it talks about how love does not rejoice with evil, but rejoices with the truth. And it's very important for us as Christians to love people, but to be truthful with them, because it might be nice to indulge in fantasies, but it's not kind, it's not loving. So he offers some beautiful ways for us as Christians and for the church to love people who are in, this is one kind of sin, but there's many other kinds of sins. We're all sinners. Each of us is a sinner. We all fall into sin, and but how to love people, but not just approve of sin. And also he talks about how it was different when he identified as gay, and what has changed over the last several decades, where it became something you do, to now becoming more of an all-inclusive identity, and how that's changed, and how that really hurts people. And there's just things that are chief in our lives, and when you make something that is sinful into an identity, that's a very difficult thing. It's a very pervasive lie. I am a Christian before anything else. That means my identity is in Christ, and that is a beautiful thing. It transcends anything else. I don't identify with my sins. I don't cling to them. And I don't, like, everything else is passing away too. Any kind of other identifier you would have, or labels that people, seems like we're so obsessed with labels in our culture, labeling people this and that, and all of those things, fade away, but who I am in Christ is the most important thing. My race or my nationality, those are not the most important things that there are in this world or in the world beyond. So anyways, his book was great. I definitely highly recommend it. It was great. Okay. All right, I've got this one here. This was Give Them Grace by Elise Fitzpatrick, Jessica Thompson. I do not recommend this book. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. It looks like I'm about 2/3 of the way through, so maybe I'll finish it just for the sake of finishing it. I feel like she had several things that I disagreed with, and I would kind of talk through them with my husband, see if I was misunderstanding them or what he thought about it. Basically, I think she had some good insights, but I didn't learn anything from this book. I feel like she had insights that I have heard put better by other people, so it was not really a valuable book to me. And yeah, so I don't know. I guess that's just to say I've read better books. So I don't think that's one that I'll keep. Okay, here's one that this is Tactics by Greg Koukl. So this is a game plan for discussing your Christian convictions. So really, this is a way to not be argumentative with people, but to help if people have ideas and you see kind of a flaw in them, I guess to ask them a question to help them think more deeply about what they're saying, because some things we just we kind of have a surface level view of it, and it's good to think about things very deeply and to analyze what we're talking about. So this is a non-confrontational way. We're not trying to win an argument or a debate. We are trying to give people things to think on and to do gardening. He talks about sort of the metaphor or idea of a harvest, and he said, not every heart is ready for a harvest, but if we can, when we have opportunity, take that opportunity to do a little bit of gardening. So to help people come closer and help people see the need, what is missing in their lives. And so, yeah, I thought it was beautiful. I did not get everything out of this book. There was so many ideas. So this is another one I'm gonna have to go through again. This is my physical copy. Me and my husband started reading this together last year. We read it like in, January, February, got maybe 4 or 5 chapters in, and did not finish it. So I audiobooked it myself this year because we just got busy, and sometimes it's harder to read books together with someone, even my own husband, than to just do it on my own. So I'll have to go through and do some more things. Let's see, I tabbed something here. This is actually about marriage, and where Jesus talks about marriage in Matthew 19. Since I am a follower of Christ, my view on marriage is the same as Jesus' view, one he made clear in Matthew 19. I'll sum it up this way. Jesus' view was one man with one woman becoming one flesh for one lifetime. So on the definition of marriage, I stand with Jesus. And yeah, it's Matthew 19, 4-6. He talks about really marriage, divorce, gender. He's quoting back to the very foundations of the Bible from Genesis 1 or Genesis 2, where God created marriage and gender and speaks very clearly on those. He's the one who created them. So whatever the government's laws are, they have no bearing on what is really true and what is real. So I would recommend if people think that Jesus didn't define marriage and that God didn't define marriage from the very outset, that's a good place to look to learn more about that. So this is a great one. I highly recommend that. Okay, let's see. This one I just finished last night. This is C.S. Lewis, Till We Have Faces, A Myth Retold. So this is based on Cupid and Psyche. And so I read that. I read The Myth of Cupid and Psyche before I read this because that's what he wants you to do. This is one where he's going to take that and change it some. And I'm still mulling over this one. It was so fascinating. I think I read this when I was about 18 or 19. Yeah, I think I was 18 the summer before I went to college. And it was, I think a lot of it went over my head, so I didn't retain much of it. This time I've been doing it with the Literary Life podcast, and they talk through it after I read the chapters. I listen with them, and they're kind of teaching through it. And but it was just really fascinating. And yes, how the disordered loves, how we can think that we love someone, but if we can just twist things in our mind so much so that our love can become, if we don't get what we want, if people don't do things how we want them to, the emotional blackmail and the twisting of things. This was just such a fascinating book. Our love can become like hatred, and that's because we're fallen. Our love it's needy. It's not good enough. The only person who's going to fill us up and make us complete is Jesus. And when we turn to other people for that, it's can be so desperate and needy and never enough, and really twisted. And this was, it was very, very fascinating. I'm still mulling over what all it means. This was kind of C.S. Lewis's self-described masterpiece. So I would say it's, Chronicles of Narnia is like easy enough for elementary school children to read or to have it read to them. The Space Trilogy, that's like high school level. I'd say 9th grade up. This at 18, I think I was still too young or not smart enough to get it. I feel like it takes some work. Not everything comes out clearly. So I'm still thinking through this and working through this, and maybe in another 10 years I will be able to understand more of it. But it is a cool book. I recommend it. Okay. All right, here's one I got from the library. This is 6 Plays by Henrik Ibsen. I did not read this whole thing. I just read A Doll's House, and it was, it was good. It was very interesting. I feel like he's making some kind of feminist declaration, and like, the main character, she feels like she's a doll, but it's, once again, it's like the disordered love. So she has kind of this secret. She has, she borrowed money, which I think it was illegal for her to, she forged her father's signature. It was illegal for women to borrow money on their own. So that's, that's not good. But she borrowed money to, as she's thinking of it, to save her husband's life. And maybe it did. I think it was kind of like the European cure, is they went traveling for a year. So they went on vacation for a year. So she did that many years ago, and she's been trying to pay it back. She's been trying to scrimp money here and there to pay it back, I think, or to save up to pay it back. And so, but it's kind of like she has this complex where she's the one who has rescued her husband, and he doesn't know about it. She's kept it secret. And okay, so he's about to get a raise, and so she's thinking, they'll have more money, so she'll be able to pay this off. But the reason she has a raise is because, or they have a raise, is because her husband is getting promoted, and he is going to fire the person who lent her the money. So the guy who lent her the money is blackmailing her with her, like he's figured out that she forged her father's signature because she dated it 3 days after her father died. And so her husband thinks they got the money from an inheritance from her father, but because her father died, it's proof that she broke the law. So he's using that as blackmail. And so he's blackmailing her to keep his job, and when that failed, to basically to get him a promotion or something. And he's a lowlife and a bad character, and her husband wants to fire him. Also, just before that, her friend had come in town and asked for a job, or said she was looking for a job, and she was like, "Oh, honey, do you have any jobs opening at I think they work at the bank, and so he was filling the guy he fired's job with her friend. Anyways, so she's all worried about that, and worried about this secret coming out, and I guess ruining the family, or maybe be a disgrace, or I don't know what kind of legal troubles they would be in exactly. But so here's the thing. She's like fantasizing about how she's going to save the family again. So she's thinking, if this is let out, then her husband will be like, "Oh, it's my fault, and you can tell the world, but I'll take the blame." And so she's like inventing all this stuff, and she's like, to protect him from having to take the blame and all the stuff, I'll throw myself into the river and save everyone. And okay, but when it actually comes out, or when he actually gets the blackmail letter to her husband, that he has this proof and that he's going to expose it if he doesn't do what he says and give him the job and stuff, he's like, her husband is like, "Okay, we're gonna have to do whatever he says." And he's like, "I can't trust you as my wife. I don't trust you around the children." And so it wasn't at all what she imagined it would be. And so then it's like, I guess her character totally changed, and it was kind of unbelievable to me. So I'd have to see this in a play and see how they worked it out, because it just seemed like suddenly it was a feminist manifesto or something. So it was like she went to her bedroom and the scales fell from her eyes, and she realized that she'd been a doll in her father's house until the time that she got married, and then she'd been a doll, so basically infantilized, which was how they treated women at a certain time. They would just, pet them, and that is how her husband treats her, like, oh, good little doll, kind of a trophy wife, and she sings, she dances, she wastes money, and is just taken care of. She doesn't really take care of her kids. They have a nanny for that in school, and so she doesn't really have much purpose or direction in life, and everything's taken care of for her, and she's infantilized. And so she realizes that, but then she has like totally lost any kind of association with her husband, because things didn't go exactly how she imagined in her mind. Like, so she didn't cast herself into the river to all this dramatic saving stuff. And so now she's like, "We're done. I need to go discover myself. So you said you don't trust me around the kids anyways. I'm leaving, and I'm not going to take any of your money because I don't know you. You're a stranger. We can't live together because you're a stranger." And it's just such a total break in character. I'm like, where did the other person even disappear to? And secondly, I totally disagree. Why would you have to abandon your husband and family in order to discover yourself, or like to learn, or to, you know, that's just heartbreaking, and it's wrong. You can learn more. On a Literary Life podcast, they often talk about how we're all repairing the ruins of our own education, and perhaps she did not have an education, but it's never too late to start. You can always start learning and growing. You don't have to grow separately and apart from other people. She just turned into a doll of a different kind. She went from one kind of dollhouse into a different kind, and it was just wild. So yes, obviously she and her husband did not have a good marital relationship, and that is sad. That's something to recognize and to grieve, but then to learn and to grow together, and, you know, and pray together about, and to find out how to be married in an equal way. So that was very fascinating. So here's a little clip from it. I must try to educate myself. You are not the man to help me in that. I must set about it alone, and that is why I am leaving you. I must stand quite alone if I am ever to know myself and my surroundings, so I cannot stay with you. Okay, later she says, her husband is saying to forsake your home, your husband, and your children, and you don't consider what the world will say. She says, I can pay no heed to that. I only know that I must do it. This is monstrous. Can you forsake your holiest duties in this way? What do you consider my holiest duties? Do I need to tell you that? Your duties to your husband and your children. I have other duties equally sacred. Impossible. What duties do you mean? My duties towards myself. Before all else, you are a wife and a mother. That I no longer believe. I believe that before all else, I am a human being, just as much as you are, or at least that I should try to become one. I know that most people agree with you, Torvald, and that they say so in books, but henceforth I can't be satisfied with what most people say and what is in books. I must think things out for myself and try to get clear about them. Anyways, so yes, we are all human, so there's some truth to it, but it's all mixed in with why do you have to go out on your own and abandon everything in order to find yourself? That is grievous and sad. And if you read her character early on, it's just it's like she's had a mental break or something. It's like yes, she was a doll of a different kind before. She was like a dancing Barbie doll or something, but now she's like a robot doll. And it's like the stranger, Albert Camus, like all of her personality disappeared. And maybe it was taffy and just cotton candy before, but she needs to find who she is. But she is a wife and a mother. There's nothing that makes that not true. So she needs to find out who she is as a person and who she is as a wife and mother, and grow in that. But yeah, it's it also does remind me of our me, myself first culture. Everything's about me. If I'm not happy, then I'm going to leave and do whatever I can, despite the consequences to other people, despite who it will hurt. And so it's very interesting. I do recommend. I thought it was a good read. It was very, very thought-provoking. I was writing about it in my journal for an hour afterwards, even though I was angry, kind of. So that was good. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's one that I just finished with my 6-year-old. So Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is the special read aloud edition, so it's huge, which is great for great big pictures. This is one I don't think I had read the first one for a long time, maybe since first or second grade. I think this one I had read to me, and I think I read all of the other ones to myself. So it was really nice to read it, and my 6-year-old loved it. He did not want it to be over. He was when we were down to the last chapter, I was like, oh, are you excited that we're down to the last chapter? He's like, no, I want it to go on forever and ever. I'm like, well, there are 8 more books, so don't worry too much about that. But yeah, that was very good. And here's 2 that I'm reading, but I'm not quite done with yet. This is Live Not by Lies, a manual for Christian dissidents by Dreher. So yeah, me and my husband, we read a few of these chapters. We read the intro and the first 3 chapters before we had to return it to the library. Now we just got it. We had to wait for some other people to have it, and then now we've just gotten it back to the library, so we need to read the rest of it if we can. It's funny because our bookmark was still in there, and then there's other people put other bookmarks in, so I wonder if they're not done either. But yeah, this one's really cool. He's talking about, was it in Poland or basically there were some people in different countries where Christianity became illegal, but there were people who, and this book is dedicated to the memory of Father Tomislav Kolakovic. So this was a priest, I believe, who saw the USSR coming. I guess there was the Nazis and the Russians, and he was seeing that whoever won, that they were going to be the losers. So he was seeing that coming, and he was preparing and training the Christians that he knew and interacted with on how to develop that strong family culture and how to live and survive in a world that would be very soon to be persecuting Christians. Prison, death. And he was right. And as soon as I think they were Nazi occupied for a while in the particular place he was. And then I think the USSR took over and they expelled him from the country. But the people he trained, they lived under tyranny and under persecution of Christians directly. And there was one lady, he talks about her story, and her husband was in prison, and she had her, I think, 4 children, and they went to the controlled schools, but in the evening, she worked all day, her children went to the government-controlled schools, and in the evenings she would read to them, and they developed such a beautiful culture, and the kinds of things that they read it wasn't just the Bible. That's the Bible gives us the core of everything. That's where our religion is founded, obviously. But she gave them things for a moral framework and things to aspire to as well. So they would read, fairy tales and mythology and lots of things that are in a Charlotte Mason education too. Just a well-rounded beauty that was totally outside of whatever the USSR was producing with their. He actually picked this artwork for the cover because it looks like some of that Soviet and communist type propaganda pictures. Not because he's in admiration of them, but it's kind of spitting in their face, really. It's mirrored back at them in a way. But this is a beautiful book, and how to weather very difficult things, and how our Christian values and what we believe cannot be stripped. How to face up and to know them well enough, know our beliefs well enough that nobody can strip them away. And there were in the USSR, there were some incredibly cruel people who were kind of obsessed with Christians. They really wanted to see how to push them past the brink. What would it take? They didn't want to kill them exactly. They wanted to torture them in as much possible ways to see if they would forsake Christ. And that's a non-negotiable. We cannot forsake Christ. And so it's, standing up to that kind of tyranny and persecution, it's fascinating and beautiful. So Jesus did not call his followers to an easy life. He said that we would be taking up our cross daily and following him. And sometimes it takes everything. Sometimes it takes cruel discrimination, persecution, and torture and death. And Jesus said, the world will not love you because it did not love me. And this is powerful. So we're not all the way through this book, so I'm looking forward to more of it. I watched a couple interviews with him too. They're fascinating. And then here is another book that I'm reading. So it's called Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters by Abigail Shrier. So this is fascinating, and she goes back through the history, and she interviews doctors and influencers, and talks about how things are set up. And when she uses the word craze, that's a very technical term. It's not meant to be derogatory. It's talking about kind of popular fads that go through, and how this so I guess transgenderism, we have over 100 years of data on how what it was like, what the normalcy was like, and the percentage of people it affected it rounds to 0%. And generally, specifically, it was boys from a very young age. But now it is it's the demographic and has totally shifted to especially adolescent and and teenage girls who all are in like a friend group. So it'll be suddenly one friend group, it'll go from 0% to like more than 70% transgender very quickly. She was saying how quick and easy it is for young impressionable girls to go on the internet and they get all this advice from, you know, maybe people in their 30s, older people, and all this attention. And basically the symptoms are all things that people going through puberty often struggle with anyways. But if they, so like social anxiety and not feeling comfortable with your body and all the changes that they're going through. But anyways, so underage girls can go and get prescriptions for testosterone the first day without any therapist, without any, you know, longevity of symptoms or really any pushback, because the standard of care is affirmative care, which just means that you don't teach biology, you don't counsel, they just say yes to everything unless you're detransitioning, and then they, that's frowned upon by modern society. So it is a trap, and a lot of girls, what she thinks is probably going to end this craze is there are going to be many girls who in their 20s start suing the doctors because they're like, there was no medical reason for this, I was deceived, you didn't give me any counseling or anything, and now my body's got permanent changes to it, I'm sterile, many things have changed. Anyways, okay, another thing about the word craze, these fad type things, the demographic, these girls that it's happening to, they're the same demographic of girls who in the past had
neurasthenia, anorexia, repressed memory, bulimia, cutting, self-diagnosis, encouragement, suggestion, psychic pain.
It's like a fad craze. It's something new to latch onto, and it's very sad. It's very difficult for parents because you have somebody who's never shown any signs of this all through versus the old demographic of very young boys, and it was very persistent and consistent. So she's showing a stark difference in that, and and also in these certain areas where it happens, it's like 70 times the proportion that you would think based on the averages. And very fascinating book. I think it's very helpful. She interviewed lots of people, lots of doctors. I think she has over 200 interviews that she did for this book. And she interviews, parents, and she interviewed like transgender influencers. And really there's a lot going on. She also talks about how the school systems are set up to deceive the parent, and kind of the tactics they use, and they're so predatory when they want to divide the family by deceiving the children and saying one set of things to the parents, one set of things to the children. It really is, it's very bad to be separating families like that purposefully. That's very dark. So anyways, it's a very interesting book, very eye-opening, lots of data and information, and then of course lots of anecdotal information as well. There's very little long-term data on this, but she was also talking about testosterone when a girl is feeling insecure and emotional, weepy, some of those things that we all struggle with. I struggled with things like that too when I was going through puberty. She says when they get the testosterone, it makes them lose that. It makes them more confident. They don't feel as much like crying. And so it helps for a little while. But then it starts coming with all these side effects, like there's a little bit of positive that doesn't always, it doesn't last. They don't feel that same way forever. Kind of like any new drug. But it comes with all these side effects and baggage, and we just don't know what all of the long-term consequences of doing this to girls is going to be. So it's a fascinating and scary issue. So anyways, that book's kind of heavy. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I'll see y'all later.